Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. In this week's program, Mindanao signs peace agreement after 40 years of conflict, Asian migrant workers dying in Qatar, MPs promise protection for Indonesian domestic workers, court delays plague Indian justice system, India, the world's largest arms importer, Voice of Survivors this week from Manipur, India. Welcome to Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. I'm Hanan Shimleli. Last week marked a historic moment for the people of the Philippines with the signing of a peace agreement ending the conflict on the island of Mindanao. The comprehensive agreement on the Bangsamoro was signed between the Philippine government and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF. With us in the studio now, we have AHRC's Danilo Ruiz from Mindanao to tell us about this landmark agreement. Welcome, Danilo. What has this long conflict been about?
Well, the conflict is all about the opportunity for the Bangsamoro to have a self-rule and to determine their own fate in terms of governance, protection of rights, and that is consistent with their culture and tradition and religious belief.
And what are some of the main points of the peace agreement? What does it mean for Mindanao?
Yeah, there are 4 annexes to the agreement. Basically what it says is the Bangsamoro people in Mindanao will have their own form of government under the Philippine Constitution, and they have their own autonomous power in terms of wealth, in terms of how they relate to the government, form of government. So that also is expressive of their aspirations as Bangsamoro people.
And you are from Mindanao. What is your reaction to this peace agreement and also your friends and family in Mindanao?
Well, there's a lot of happiness, and we welcome, most of the people in Mindanao welcome this landmark agreement. The conflict has been going on for 40 years, and I think it is good that the people in Mindanao and the Filipino people had come to a political solution ending the conflict in Mindanao and the possibility for the Bangsamoro people also to define their own fate and destiny in future.
Qatar, the FIFA World Cup 2022 hosts, have already seen the death of more than 1,200 workers, mostly from South Asia. Numbers available from embassies put the Indian casualties at 771, while Nepalese are at 385. All these deaths have reportedly been related to forcing workers involved in World Cup-related projects to work in extreme, inhumane conditions. International Trade Union Confederation, for example, exposed incidences of forced labor on a huge World Cup infrastructure project. Other serious violations exposed include confiscation of workers' passports and forcing them to work for 24 hours without a break while withholding drinking water even when temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Forced labor in such challenging climatic conditions has led to many cases of sudden strokes on work sites. The forced labor comes from the kafala system prevailing in Qatar for construction migrant workers. Workers are tied to their employer and not allowed to change jobs or leave the country without permission under this modern incarnation of slavery. The ITUC further estimates that the death toll could rise to a staggering 4,000 migrant workers even before the first ball is kicked in the event opener. The world community's silence, despite being well aware of the issue, is baffling. The issue was raised in the European Parliament with the officialdom of FIFA in attendance. There have also been strong demands to strip Qatar from hosting FIFA 2022 and forcing the FIFA to own up to partial responsibility amidst attempts to blame the abuse on the local hosts. Theo Swanzinger, Germany's member of the FIFA executive, conceded that the working conditions have been absolutely unacceptable, but further argued that any such act would be counterproductive. It is high time for the world community to act, as no sports event can be more important than the lives of thousands of workers. Not a single accidental death took place on the construction sites of the London Olympics, for instance, so there is no reason why Qatar and FIFA can be excused for so many. Welcoming the upcoming general election in Indonesia in April this year, the Indonesian domestic workers in Hong Kong have held a public debate with 5 MP candidates from 4 political parties. The MPs candidates involved in the debate were Latifa El-Anshori of the National Democratic Party, Abdul Wahid Maktoub and Muhammad Miftah of the National Awakening Party, Masinton Pasaribu of the Indonesia Democratic Party of Struggle, and Yoga Dirga Chacha of the National Mandate Party. The debate was aimed at providing education on and political support for the Indonesian domestic workers in Hong Kong while exploring the party's views and policies on migrant workers. Throughout the debate, the MP candidates promised to provide more protection for the Indonesian domestic workers in Hong Kong and other countries. The candidates also claimed that their parties will support the revision of the current law on migrant workers. The law itself is considered to be problematic, as it is lacking in protection for Indonesian domestic workers abroad. The MP candidates also promised to abolish the special ID card for Indonesian migrant workers. This card has been used by authorities to obtain extra money from the workers.
Dihapus itu sepakat, hampir semuanya sepakat karena teman-teman civil society di Indonesia juga sudah menyatakan dengan dihapusnya itu perlu.
The MP candidates, however, were divided on the issue of direct hiring of Indonesian migrant workers. Yoga Dirga Chacha said that migrant workers should get employment only from agencies for the sake of their protection, while Muhammad Miftah was of the view that migrant workers should be given the options of whether to find their own employer or to register with recruitment and employment agencies. On March 10, the Supreme Court ordered for a time-bound adjudication of all trials involving legislators within a year. This is a welcome step towards the administration of justice and guaranteeing speedy trials in a country that has the biggest backlog of cases in the world. This order is part of a series of reformative judgments from the Apex Court towards cleaning up the political space in the country. According to a study by Association of Democratic Reforms, out of the 162 MPs that have criminal cases pending against them, 76 are for serious criminal cases like murder, attempt to murder, kidnapping, and robbery. The study was based on affidavits filed by the candidates in the 2009 general election. It shows that the average number of years that criminal cases against MPs have been pending is 7 years. Serious criminal cases like rioting and theft are pending for as long as 28 years, while other serious allegations like murder have also been pending for 25 years. Access to justice remains a deep concern in India. While this recent Supreme Court order on speedy trials is a welcome step, common people in the country are still denied access to justice. The number of pending cases before the Supreme Court is currently more than 65,000, according to records available on the court's own website. Also, 4.4 million cases are pending before the high courts, and nearly 27 million cases are still pending before the subordinate courts. A lack of judges contributes to the backlog of the cases. Despite years of demanding an increase in the numbers of judges, it was only in February this year that the law minister announced that there will be a 25% increase of judges in all high courts in the country. Speedy trial is a fundamental right and a constitutional obligation of the state, and the AHRC urges the Indian state to take immediate measures to ensure speedy justice to all citizens. And we stay in India, which remains the world's largest importer of arms, including an increase of 111% in the past 5 years alone. It now accounts for 14% of the world's arms imports. This was published by Stockholm International Peace Research Institute last week. The research also found that India's arms import is almost double and triple that of its neighbors China and Pakistan respectively. The research further reveals that United States and Russia dominate arms exports with over half of the global market. In April 2012, Indian Defense Minister A.K. Anthony informed the Parliament that the acquisition of defense equipment, both from foreign as well as indigenous sources, is in accordance with the modernization program of the armed forces. The 2012 defense budget reached 17% of the country's total budget. The AHRC points out that this increased budgetary allocation has hardly improved overall law enforcement in the country, which remains unfriendly and inaccessible for civilians. Security for life and property remains a privilege for the rich and does not reach the common people. It is equally serious that despite modernization strategies, armed forces deployed in internal conflicts in India have a poor human rights record. It is also a matter of great concern that increased investments in arms will decrease investment in other crucial social indicators like health. India spends around 4.1% of its GDP on health, one of the lowest in BRICS countries. The country has only 6.49 doctors per 10,000 people, lower than even Pakistan, which spends just 2.5% of its GDP on healthcare. AHRC urges the government of India to reduce the expenditure on arms trade, increase budgetary allocations on health, education, eradication of malnutrition and hunger, and reform law enforcement agencies in the country. In this week's Voices of Survivors, we hear from Manipur, India.
Because of the high level of human rights violation. I mean, before we were not taught about what is human rights, and because we only know like if somebody who is more rich asks you to do something, you are supposed to do, and if a man asks you to obey him, then you are supposed to obey. That was like the concept that how we were brought up. And slowly, I mean, once we came here, there are a lot of, harassment and human rights violation, committed by both the state and non-state actors. We have been facing a lot of all this violence. And slowly, sometime confronting with the security forces, sometimes confronting with the non-state actors. All this automatically, bring me into this human rights activism, I should say, because in terms of professionality, I'm not trained and I'm not a professional, or I don't study about human rights, but it's all whatever I know, I learned through experience. And that's.
That is all for this week's Human Rights Asia Weekly Roundup. For more information on these issues, log on to www.humanrights.asia. Thank you for watching and hope to see you again next week.